Here, Winnipeg, Manitoba, the West End. It was here where Tanya Nepinak said goodbye to her family and then went missing without a trace. The mother of 2 children, Tanya is presumed murdered. Her body has never been found. At any time during this broadcast or afterward, if you have any information that might help solve the case of the disappearance of Tanya Nepinak, visit our website. Someone out there has answers. Our goal is to find them. Why were charges dropped against Sean Lamb? Is Tanya's body buried in a Winnipeg landfill? Or could she still be alive? What happened to Tanya Nepinak? Tanya Jane Nepinak was born into a family that was plagued by tragedy, acts of violence, and murder. Tanya's aunt Susan Caribou was taken in by Tanya's parents when both of her parents were murdered. 2 of the many murders that have impacted Tanya's family.
My grandfather was murdered, and still to this day, no one's charged. My late sister was found on a sidewalk, no investigation. Somebody had beaten her and drugged her and left her on the sidewalk. My cousin Janet was murdered. Both my parents were murdered. My 8-year-old niece was murdered. And there's still no justice for my family.
As a young woman, Tanya tried to break the cycle and start a family of her own. She met and fell in love fast with Vernon Mann. Together they had 2 children, Joseph and Jasmine.
A lot of good times together and cared about each other a lot. She was a really, really good mother. Always looked after our kids really well.
Even though Vernon and Tanya loved each other, things became very dark between them. No one knows exactly what demons plagued Tanya. She was gripped by alcohol. Vernon got a restraining order against her. Tanya left Vernon and her children in the country and moved back to the city.
She was missing her kids. Every day she would talk about her kids.
On the night of September 13th, 2011, Tanya's family said goodbye to her for the last time. Tanya told them she was headed for a nearby restaurant, Papa Guido's, for a drink. Did Tanya ever make it there?
She always went to Papa Guido's, or she went there every night. And she always let us know where she was heading. And she always wore the black cap and sweater, black pants, boots. She said she was gonna be home before bingo was over. Because my sister and my late brother-in-law went to bingo, and when they got home, Tanya still wasn't home.
Where did Tanya Nepinak end up the night of September 13th, 2011? Who was she with? Who is responsible for her disappearance and presumably her murder? Sergeant John O'Donovan is with the Winnipeg Police Service. He is currently one of the 2 supervisors in charge of the homicide unit. He wasn't assigned to Tanya's case in the beginning, but is now on the case, searching for answers.
It was in September 2011, I believe, I believe it was the 16th of September is when Tanya was reported missing. She was last seen on the 13th of September. She was reported missing by family members, and they make the inquiries, try and find out where she might have been, who she usually stayed with, who she would hang out with, where she goes when she isn't at home with her family, and trying to piece it together and seeing who was the last people to see her and where was the last person that she went.
Did law enforcement do all they could to find Tanya Nepinak? Did the serial killer who confessed to Tanya's murder actually commit the crime? How did the search for Tanya's body in a Winnipeg landfill break down? For more information, or if you have any answers, visit our website. 31-year-old Tanya Nepinak was born into a family with a history of violence. On the night of September 13th, 2011, in Winnipeg, Tanya's family says she went missing and was never seen again. That night, Tanya said she was going to Papa Guido's, a nearby restaurant on the corner of Ellis Avenue and Home Street. Eventually, serial killer Sean Lamb confessed to Tanya's murder and would lead police to search a Winnipeg landfill. But why wasn't he convicted of the crime? The night Tanya went missing, her mother knew something was wrong right away. Tanya always came home no matter what.
And she called me first thing in the morning, like telling me, well, Tanya told me she was gonna be home before bingo was over, and she only had $5 on her. So that's the last time we seen her.
Tanya's Aunt Susan Caribou was taken in by Tanya's parents when her own parents were murdered. She had a special relationship with Tanya, who called her Auntie Mom. Tanya was born into a big, close-knit family, and family was always important to her. She loved listening to music with them, singing and dancing. But there was a darkness in Tanya's family, a long string of violence and unsolved murders. That darkness colored Tanya's life. Shauna Ferris is an award-winning professor at the University of Manitoba. Missing and murdered women is one of her key areas of research, as is urbanization and violence.
Feminists and Indigenous researchers and leaders have talked about cycles of violence for years. So one of the things that happens is colonialism is violent. It sets out all of these violent policies that are perpetuated at all different levels. So we have the Indian residential schools that white settlers who weren't actually involved in the schools themselves just sort of sat by and let happen. And then the 60s scoop follows that, and what we get is this sort of constant, ongoing cycle of violence that is felt most immediately by Indigenous communities.
The last time Tanya's ex-partner and the father of her children, Vernon Mann, saw Tanya was about a month before she went missing.
Last time I saw her, she came out to Beausejour. We weren't together at the time. She came out to visit the kids. And that would be the last time I seen her.
When Tanya didn't come home the night of her disappearance, Sue sprang into action.
I asked my sister did you contact the police? And she said, yeah. And the police told her that has to be 24 hours before they can do anything. So I told my sister, find the biggest picture of Tanya, and I'll be there.
Immediately, Sue contacted the media, and the search for Tanya began.
After 24 hours, we did our own search and our own calls while we waited for that 24 hours to go by. It seemed like forever, And when it was finally time to call them back, they didn't take it serious. And that, she's an adult, and she'll get home when she gets home.
Tanya's family search included the last place they'd known Tanya to be, Papa Guido's restaurant, now under new ownership with a new name. At the time of Tanya's disappearance, the owners of Papa Guido's did not want Tanya's family investigating.
We kept going there. We kept asking questions. I said, wow, this is where my niece was last seen. I'm sure somebody here must have heard something or seen something.
Tanya's family was keen to respond to any tip. A transgender street worker claimed that there had been a connection between Tanya's disappearance and convicted murderer Sean Lamb. The family followed that tip and dug for over a month, but didn't find Tanya. Then from prison, Sean Lamb made a shocking confession.
The homicide detectives called us in, we had a meeting with them, and they told us that Sean Lamb admitted to killing her.
Sean Lamb said that he murdered Lorna Blacksmith and my cousin Caroline Sinclair. She was 5 months pregnant, and my niece Tanya. He admitted to those 3 murders.
While in custody for murdering Lorna and Caroline, Sean Lamb was paid $1,500 by law enforcement for confessing to Tanya's murder and giving information that he dumped Tanya's body in a garbage bin.
You know, I would almost call it a technique at that stage. That was a decision that was made at the time by the investigators who were involved in the investigation as to, okay, is this guy going to tell us something more?
Sean Lamb's own defense lawyer, Martin Glazer, had never experienced a murderer paid for a confession.
All I can say is what I said in open court today, that he was paid by the police for confessing. The first time I've ever seen such a case in Canada, and I've been a criminal lawyer for 31 years.
Sean Lamb was sentenced to 2 20-year terms in prison for the murders of Lorna Blacksmith and Caroline Sinclair. Despite Lamb's confession, the charges against him for murdering Tanya were stayed.
He was charged with the murder of Tanya based on the information that he had provided. And the Crown decided that it was probably better to go with the 2 for sure that we could prove, and stay that charge at that time. And that's a decision that we've taken this guy off the street.
Sean Lamb declined to be interviewed for this program. Did he get away with murder? We may never know. But with the information Sean Lamb provided to police, it was determined that a search for Tanya's body would be conducted at the Brady landfill, the dumping ground for Winnipeg's residential and commercial waste. Tanya's family was hopeful that the 31-day search would help them find closure. But the search was called off after only a few days. Tanya had not been found.
They canceled the digging right on my niece's birthday. The day of her birthday, they canceled that dig. They stopped digging when they told us 31 days.
Law enforcement's active search for Tanya Nepinak was over, but her family has never given up hope of finding closure. What is being done for Tanya now? And can there be an end to the cycle of violence for Tanya's family? Thirty-one-year-old Tanya Nepinak disappeared from Winnipeg's West End, headed for the Ellis Avenue and Home Street area on September 13th, 2011. She is presumed murdered. Serial killer Sean Lamb confessed to murdering Tanya and dumping her in a garbage bin. But charges were stayed, and justice has never been served. The truth is out there about what really happened to Tanya Nepinak. At any time during this broadcast or afterward, if you have any answers or want more information on this case, visit our website. Tanya is remembered by her family as full of love and laughter, a beloved niece, daughter, and mother. Cultural specialist Mary Wilson works with the University of Manitoba in Indigenous health.
You know, when there are acts of terrible violence against other brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, daughters, sons, this has to be addressed. And so therefore, a lot of times those spirits, much like Tanya, have that little restlessness that she's just not quite settled. Neither is her family. How can you be? You know, it's so important that as a community we come together to help her rest. Like, she's somebody's daughter. She's our sister.
Tanya Nepinak's body has never been found. Vernon wishes the mother of his children could be out there somewhere, that someday she might come home.
From what the police tell us, there's no chance.
For Tanya's children, the loss of their mom has affected them deeply.
I know my son probably took it almost the hardest because he was very, very close to her. And he's never been the same since. He doesn't really leave his bedroom anymore. He just sits in his room by himself.
Tanya's daughter Jasmine, now 14, is also coping with her mom being gone.
She still has a lot of rough days about it, and people will bring it up at school and stuff, and she'll call me crying. But she's getting there. She's getting better.
Even though Vernon and Tanya weren't together at the time she disappeared, he still thinks about her.
My daughter looks exactly like her, so I see it. I see her every day.
For some of Tanya's family, the pull of the cycle of violence is too strong. On January 13th, 2016, Tanya's sisters, Candace and Vanessa, were charged with the second-degree murder of Cynthia Marie French and the attempted murder of her sister. Cynthia was pregnant at the time of her murder. Tanya's Aunt Sue was asked to speak for the family.
I'm so sorry for the family's loss, the French family. A lot of people are saying that my family should have asked for help, but my family has been asking for help. All these years we've been asking for help, and nobody has heard our voices.
There's all kinds of ways in which the violence that started with colonialism is felt and dealt with most immediately by Indigenous communities. And we have this way of framing that violence as somehow something that Indigenous communities have to deal with. But the fact is, white settlers have a stake here. We've benefited from an education system that taught us not to care, or that taught us that all of the problems that Indigenous peoples face are endemic to Indigenous communities. And we have a responsibility to follow the leadership that's happening in all of our communities and to start to undo the colonial project.
In our culture, it's important to remember that all the children, regardless of where they come from, regardless of who they are our responsibility to take care of. So when one of our children, like Tanya, have been hurt, it's our responsibility to make sure that she's appropriately loved and carried through to the other side. I really believe that her death is not meant to be in vain, that it is meant to propel us to a more peaceful existence and to say, this is not acceptable. We cannot allow pain and suffering to overlap into people's minds, psyches, until we harm one another. This is just not okay.
Tanya's family has had 4 vigils for her, each on the anniversary of her disappearance. For Tanya's Aunt Sue, healing comes from helping others.
So I've been working very hard with the missing and murdered, or be there for other families that have a loved one missing. People say that it gets easier, but as the years go by, it only gets harder. Because we don't know where she is. I don't know if we'll ever see her again. We don't have a closure for my niece. And it's very hard every day to deal with it. I think of her every day. What helps me a lot is having faith and praying, smudging. I can't give up on Tanya. She deserves proper burial. Everybody deserves proper burial. And I want my niece to have that. I want my niece to be found.
Sergeant John O'Donovan has advice for anyone watching who might have information that could help solve these cases.
If you know something about any of these unsolved homicides, and whether it be Nepinak or any of the other ladies that have died or gone missing, or any of the other people, and that unsolved cases, you gotta call the police and let us know what it is. Sometimes you may think it's a minuscule thing that you know and it's got no value to the investigation, but you could be wrong. And we will certainly talk to anybody that calls, and we'll follow up on every single lead because we want to bring justice for these people and their families and close these cases.
For more information about Tanya Nepinak, visit our website.